Welcome to another episode of the Inspired Hive podcast. This is the show for entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs, and professionals looking to rise to next levels of success. Join us each week as we explore leadership, innovation, and the entrepreneurial journey, fueling your mind with the inspiration and strategies to make your vision a reality. I am absolutely thrilled to chat with Scott St. John. Scott is the Chief Attitude Officer at Flip My Life. He empowers individuals to shift their mindset, break through self-doubt, and take control of our futures. Through coaching, motivation, practical strategies, he helps us cultivate confidence, resilience, and success-driven attitudes. He's been featured in Shape and Women's Health magazines. He's been on ABC and Fox News. Scott teaches people to consistently show up, do less better, have an I can, I will attitude to life, and my favorite, that smiling makes it feel better. Get ready to be inspired and empowered. Let's get started. Again, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. I met Scott during the pandemic years when my bestie and I pivoted to strong, confident living workouts for our training daily workouts. And not only did Scott kick our butts, he brought out the badass in all of us. And that started with the mindset. It transferred into our workouts. I've learned so much mindset and resilience through showing up to these workout sessions. And Scott, I'm just so thrilled to welcome you to the Inspired Hive podcast.
Well, Margot, thanks so much for having me. And like I said, I'm thrilled to always be able to spread the love. So happy to be here.
Well, I know through kind of following you on social media, and we've had a couple conversations over the years, but I know little bits and pieces of your story, but I'd love to hear where your story began.
So me, it started really young. I grew up in a really rural place in Guilford, Vermont, and my whole attitude and my whole life kind of shifted at a young age when I had this kind of pivotal moment with my grandfather. My grandfather, Sam, had a really big impact on my life. And I was over at his house, which was right next door to mine, because we ended up splitting up a dairy farm that my grandfather bought when he retired from, actually just left IBM as an executive and said he was going to raise his three boys to be men. So he bought a farm in Vermont and raised
That'll do it.
three incredible men. So I was over at his house one day. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I was frustrated, and I was trying to get something done, and I just couldn't do it. And I said to him, "I'm like, I can't do this," and he stopped me in my tracks. And with this stern voice and his finger pointing at me, he's like, "Scott," he's like, "can't is not in the St. John dictionary, and don't ever use that word again." And it was like, pow, right? Like here I am, this young kid, and it just hit me like a rock. And from that moment on, I was like, all right, I'm not going to use the word can't. And that really just shifted really my mindset on how I go about approaching anything. Sure, have I struggled with lots of things? Absolutely, but I've never given up. And that really goes back to my grandfather's words of being very stern with me. And my parents also said to me at a really young age, if you're going to believe in anything, believe in yourself. So, I
Wow.
mean, there are two really defining moments in my childhood that kind of
Mhm.
set me on this path of having an attitude of I can, I will. And that's really where the I can, I will attitude came from. It's why it's tattooed on my wrist. It's why it's really the epitome of what I go back to when I work with people. And that's, again, changing what goes on between your ears, because it's one of the things I say a lot. It all starts between your ears. And that's what I just really enjoy is getting in between people's ears and flipping their mindset and giving them that idea of I can, I will.
I love this so much. There's so many folks that I talk to that their early years and family are such an incredible influence that they carry with them. And you're such an inspiration for so many. And I can't tell you how many miles you have run in between my ears that, it really has a lot to do with the things that we tell ourselves and who we surround ourselves with. And um, giving people the courage to take steps to surround themselves and tell themselves different things than what they have been. And I think that's such a key thing that you convey to so many folks that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think in particular, I've worked with starting at kids at the age of 3 when we owned our education company and spent 19 years, really, 15 years working with children. And that really set me up also for working with adults because
Mm,
they were so amazing to work with. And, we always said, children are nothing more than young adults. So I always treated them like young adults. And with that, I really was able to gain the aspect of how to get into people's heads and understand, at a small level, how we react, how we think. And it's just, it's been amazing to me to see how many people have negative self-talk, right?
mm,
And how it holds everyone back. And I don't care whether it's in business or in fitness or your relationships or just within your own body. Um, we really beat ourselves up, and I do it too. I mean, I'm not, subject to the inevitable wrong self-talk. I have it, and I try to, again, when I do, I recognize that and try to change that as quickly as possible because well, there's one thing, I tell people, and there is no perfect. There is no, don't ever
mm.
think everything's always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Life is hard, and that's okay. It teaches us a lot about resilience. It teaches us a lot about, who we are. And I tell this especially to my boys because, we have 3 boys now are 20, 18, and 15, 14. Um, and I tell this to them all the time, and it's something I actually use with my clients a lot. How you show up for anything is how you do everything. So even the smallest things we do, and if we're not putting the intentional work into it, that carries over to everything else we do. So one of the things I really, really enjoy about what I do is I get to see people have those aha moments. And especially when I do it through fitness, as you know, I believe strongly in moving your body. I believe a body at rest is dead. And no matter what age you're at or what ability you're at, you can move your body. And it doesn't have to be to the extreme, but it has to be to the point of getting yourself uncomfortable, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where you really learn who you are and what you're capable or what you're more likely willing to do. And so how you show up for anything, and again, it's even the smallest task that pulls into how you show up for everything else. And I really love to focus on that.
Well, and that movement's so key because even a slight shift changes the view and changes the perspective. And your message around showing up, I mean, it's everything. If you can take that step and that action, then whatever follows from there is something that is extra or more than you thought you could do the moment before, which is it just I think is such a contribution. And the one thing that I wanted to highlight in this is these lessons are lessons through video. Like it wasn't live workouts. These were, this is your course that you put together. This is how you approach and train folks when they're in person. But these are the things we chose to surround ourselves with to make a difference and make a shift. And it continues on, just like that story from your grandpa. You're still living that today and you're embodying that for others. And it's such a powerful legacy that I'm just so in awe of. So appreciative that you have shared that out with the world.
Yeah, when it comes to the workouts in particular, and when we filmed our online workouts, I really wanted to take an approach where I wasn't a fitness instructor, right?
Hmm.
Like and that goes back to even when I opened up gyms, and even though all we did was run classes, I made it an emphasis that we would not be fitness instructors, right? And that meant we're not going to stand in front of the class and do the workouts with them and just be cheerleaders, That's not how it was going to work with the style I delivered. And I felt like it was really important to get in people's faces, to get next to them, to feel their energy, to let them feel our energy, and to know that we were right there with them. And even through the online experience, I
Mhm.
find I would really make it a point to come up to the screen, to whisper into the screen, to come back off the screen, to give that a feeling that I was there with you. Because again, I wanted to be in your ears and I wanted to carry that over because it's really a powerful position when you can get into that mindset of
Mhm.
feeling the change happen, right? And in understanding what you're going through and not just being, as an instructor, kind of laissez-faire, like I want to be in it with you. I want to understand what you're going through. I want you to know that I'm there with you. And that is such a powerful experience that it carries on to, again, I can't even I mean, I have so many messages throughout the years from people saying, because of what we did through the workout, it's carried over to my job. It's carried over to how I go around the house. It's carried over to how I deal with my husband or my wife. It carries over to, every aspect of life. And that's what it's all about. And that's why fitness can actually be such an amazing motivator for people because it puts you in a frame of mind where your body starts to feel better, right? It releases these endorphins, and all of a sudden, you don't even realize what it is, but you walk out like people would walk out of it an experience and be like, what the heck just happened to me? They're exhausted, right? But they're exhilarated and they're like, how is this possible? And it's possible because of those endorphins and the way we make people feel. Like my attitude was I wanted to create strong, confident people, right? And it didn't matter if you were 150 pounds overweight or if you were a mom at home or if you're a triathlete. I was going to treat you exactly the same. Sure, you're all at different levels, but I was going to make sure that everyone felt successful and everyone was pushed to their limits because there's no comparison. And I think that's another thing, especially in this day and age with all the social media that we have and just everything flying at us at once. We start to compare, well, that looks amazing. Look at what they're doing. And a lot of times it's just BS, and we're just making up this fake life for some people are. So when I talk to people, I'm like, all I want you to do is look in the mirror and say, that's my competition. It's me. Like how I show up for me. I've got a really good friend out here in California now who loves to play sports with me, and he's so competitive, and he's always like, all you want to do is beat me. And I'm like, no, I don't want to beat you. I'm actually not even competing against you. I'm competing against me. Now, if I beat you, that, whatever. But like, and it's such a different mindset shift when you're not competing against someone else and you just let it happen because you're actually just trying to be the best version of you.
What a truth it is in thinking about how can I be better than I was yesterday versus how can I be better than the person across the mat from me or the net
Exactly.
or whatever. And we all come with our gifts and talents and challenges. And I think that's one of the things that you did such an amazing job of is kind of neutralizing that, so to speak, because it's just about what you did yesterday or the last time you did the workout, and can you do it a little more or a little better this time? And when you smile, magic things happen.
And again, it's why I use that line, right?
Yeah,
Because
totally.
magic things happen when you smile. So smiling makes it feel better 100%.
I'm super curious because it is not easy to engage when you're recording things without a live person on the other side. And you had Laura there, which I think that she has another gift of magic that comes through in the workouts. But I'm curious kind of what you use for inspiration in kind of interacting with the camera. I know there are times I sometimes put little eyeballs on mine, but I'm curious kind of what some of the behind the scenes might have been for you there.
So that goes back to my education days, right? So when we had an education company, we started out with these learning centers and we were teaching children how to use technology as a tool, not a toy. And again, we were dealing with really young kids from the ages of 3 to 9 is what we really
Okay.
focused in on because we wanted them to understand that this was not going to be a toy. And now I'm talking, this is back in 2000, 1999, 2000, really when computers were
Sure.
just starting to come out. And like we were ahead of the game here. And so we really just caught on. People loved what we were doing. And we decided that we were going to empower others to run our program. So we started licensing out our program and gave it as a business opportunity, not a franchise. Now, when we did this, we said, well, how can we capture the magic that Laura and I had in these centers? And in particular, me, because most of the time, young kids did not have a male influence at that age in schooling, right? So for some reason, the kids were just magnets to me, right? They loved it because they weren't used to the male. Yeah, Laura was amazing and she was just as great, but for some reason, my voice and just having that male influence really made a difference. So what we started to do is when we created our curriculum for all of our licensees, I actually became like a Blues Clues character. Remember Blues Clues and Steve
I
was up
do.
there? So I filmed myself delivering our lessons in our own software. Again, along this journey with the kids, I'd pop up on the screen, I'd walk them through what they're doing. And it was very similar to what I do with the gym, you know? The so my inspiration was how do I keep kids engaged? Because again, when you're dealing with 3 to 9 year olds, there's no hesitation with them. If they're not engaged, they just get up and walk away, because they're just like, all right, this is boring, So there's just such a beautiful raw and a rawness to that, and
No
that
filter.
taught me how to engage people through video.
Mm.
And because again, if I didn't do it, they were the first ones to be like, you're no good at this. And we were actually able to be really successful in delivering it that way because I looked at the camera as if it was one of the kids I was trying to keep engaged, right? And I was trying to have that little touch of a moment with them every single time I was on the screen. So that's really what helped create and define my virtual presence was kids.
I love that. And it's like you're speaking to our inner kid at times, right?
Exactly.
And
Well,
that
we
really
only get
shows.
older, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, where do you get your inspiration from on the day to day?
It's funny because I people ask me that all the time. They're like, "What books do you read?" I'm like,
Mm.
I don't really read books. Every once in a while, I'll pick up a book and read it, but I've never been a big book reader. I've never really gravitated towards being like, that's the person I really want. Yeah, maybe I've seen some things and taken it here from there. But I mean, I think when I go back to it, it really resonates, goes back to my grandfather and telling me, like, don't ever say the word can't. And that like stamped such an impression on me that I didn't need any additional motivation because I was
Mhm.
like, well, if I can't say can't, then there's nothing I can't do. Like I will either figure it out or I'll fail and I'll succeed again. And that's another thing that actually makes me think of another thing that I find really interesting when working with people. And that's this fear of failure.
Oh,
One of the lines I always love to use with people is put the damn book down, right? Like,
yeah.
stop trying to prepare yourself. You want to feel like you're prepared, just start doing it. And if, guess what? You're going to make mistakes. Guess what? It's great. Look at anyone who's been super successful in life and they have failed miserably. The only thing is they don't quit, and people get so frustrated at times when they make a mistake or they fail at something. They're like, oh, see, I couldn't do it. I'm like, no, no, learn from it. Keep going. The only thing that separates you from the person who's doing it and not doing it is that you're stopping. Like, just don't stop. Take every little win, and it doesn't have to be big. I especially see this with people in weight loss journeys, right?
Mm.
They think they've got to move the scale so much and they get frustrated when it's only moving a little bit. It's like, no, that is a win. Every little bit is a win, and you take those and you just keep building, right? You just keep building. And the more you keep building, the bigger it gets.
That's such a powerful message, especially in today's world of a lot of uncertainty, but also just this expectation that everything we should do should be magical and right and perfect the first time. And
Instant.
if we don't make a mistake, there's not a lot of learning that happens, right? And I think that's a journey with kids that I've learned a long time ago that when you make the mistake, it's that lesson of how to correct it or how to improve upon it or what you have to shift to kind of aim and redirect that those are the power tools of pivot and resilience as opposed to always having it roll out just the way
It
you
never
think it
does, right?
will, right?
It really never does. And that's, again, that's a
Never.
beautiful thing. It rolls out the way
Yeah.
it's supposed to.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to ask, has there been something that, aside from kind of the messaging, but has there been an experience in your life that's given you some of those big lessons that you kind of carry with you along the way?
I mean, I've failed at so many different things, and I've fallen on my face so many different times. And again, I've had to pick myself up. I've had to reinvent myself. I mean, today I'm celebrating 2 years alcohol free.
I love
Um,
that.
I realized 2 years ago that, like throughout my life, alcohol never really served me. And I was just like, I'm just done with this. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm done worrying. I'm done. Like, I'm just done. And it's been amazing. Like, I've talked to so many people who deal with alcoholism and the struggle of it. And I feel so fortunate because I didn't never felt like I was addicted to alcohol,
Hmm.
but I never felt like I also used it correctly when I used it. Um,
Mm,
so that was probably one of the bigger, most recent incidences I've had where I was just like, it's time to shift. It's time to do
yeah.
something different. Like I'm going to be like, I've turned 50 years old this past year. And I was like, I really want to get better and better as I age. And this isn't serving me anymore. And well, really never served me well anyways. I was just too stupid to recognize it. Um, and that's what I tell people. I'm like, listen, it happens when it happens.
Yeah.
You can't force things. No matter what you think, if you're not ready for it, it's not going to work. So you just have to take those pieces and just keep building and keep building. And I mean, the biggest thing I tell everyone is just don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. You can do amazing things. You have the ability to do amazing things. You just have to keep going.
I love this journey that you've shared with others too, in terms of things that you're shifting. Because, I mean, folks look at you, you look amazingly healthy and you kick our butts on the workouts all the time. And yet, you're finding new things to kind of flip and shift. And I think that really is that kind of lifelong message of continuing to develop and grow and prosper in all sorts of different ways. And I'd love to hear kind of what's coming, what's new, what you're working on, brag on the things you got going on.
So I'm really actually excited about what I've just started within the last 9 months is well, it's been a 2 year ordeal, but really the last 9 months that we've gone live with it, and that's flipped my life. Um,
Hmm.
Laura's actual cousin approached us a couple years back, and he was a really successful direct to market uh, inventor, seller of products, right? He's like, gosh, I've sold everything under the sun. I've sold just millions and millions of products. He's like, but I've never sold anything that really made me feel good. He's like,
Uh,
I want to actually sell something and make something that I can leave a legacy with. He's like, I've been watching you guys with strong, confident living for so many years, living this lifestyle. He's like, at that point in his life, he was in his mid 50s, almost 60. And he's like, I'm going through my own health transformation. He's like, and I'm realizing there's not a lot of products out there that I like to use that make me feel good. He's like,
mhm.
I want to feel good about myself and I want to feel good with the products I'm taking. He's like, I've met this amazing doctor who believes that food is medicine. And he's like, me being a product guy and inventor guy, he's like, I want to put together these products and I want you to, in particular, to help me lead this as a lifestyle. And I was like, that's something I can get behind, right? Like I could sell anything, but I don't, it's not what I do. I live the experience. And that's what's been so actually like so rewarding for what I've done my entire life is I don't just like have a business or I'm just not selling things. I'm living it. I do it on a daily basis. This is my life. This is how I live. I want to actually get better as I get older. And I do that through fitness, nutrition, and mindset. So when he approached me and he was like, listen, he's like, I've got these amazing shakes. I want you to try them. I know you've done shakes in the past. Tell me what you think. Let's see it. So of course I was like, I'm in, like, give them to me. And again, I left the last company I was with because I they changed their formula and I was like, oh, like this is gross. I don't like this does not work for me anymore. I want to feel good when I'm taking these. So I tried to flip my life, flip seven shake when it was in its infancy, as we were making this grand idea. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. I can get behind this. And again, we when we came to the idea of creating Flip My Life, and we came up with that. So we were like, this is a great brand for what we want to do. We want to flip people's lives. So we went live about 9 months ago with it, and it's just been incredible. People from all around the country, they're having the exact effects that we knew they would have, and
Yeah.
we're creating this amazing community on Facebook right now, giving people the opportunity to share their wins and their struggles and be real. And it's very similar to what I was doing with Strong Confident Living. That's still the same exact thing. It's just I flipped it into our Flip My Life, and it's just so rewarding. It's so rewarding again to see people who are struggling, people who have almost given up on themselves, feeling alive again and feeling like, oh my God, like, okay, I'm not in the grave yet. I can actually get better. I don't have to feel like this. I can improve my life. And it's so rewarding. I really enjoy what I get to do on a daily basis because I get to help people have their own flip my life moments.
Oh, and I love that it's not just a nutrition, it's not just mindset, it's community, all of the influences that make change possible for us. I'm super excited to see where this grows and goes for you. As we're wrapping up, is there a piece of advice that you would give the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I would tell someone is to get really clear on what you want and be unapologetic for that, right? And put yourself first. One of the biggest things you can learn is if you put yourself first, then you show up better for everyone else in your life. And especially, I see it the most with moms, right? Because they are so selfish with putting themselves last and taking care of the husbands or the kids and everyone else first, and are completely drained, right? So because I've worked with probably 90% women throughout my career, and it's the one of the biggest things I've seen. Fill up your cup because then you show up so much more brighter for everyone else. And it seems selfish at first. It seems selfish to say like I'm going to put myself first, but it's not a selfishness. It's actually a fulfillment. And when you can do that, and when you can then show up every single day, and remember, every single day, it's just footsteps, right? It doesn't have to be a huge jump. It doesn't have to be something spectacular, but it has to be consistent. Because if you're not consistent, nothing will actually end up working out. So put yourself first, show up every day, do those things that you do like you're doing anything else, right? It's how you do anything is how you do everything. And you just make those little tiny shifts in yourself, you can be unstoppable, and it doesn't take long.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I always wrap these with a quote, and I select the quote well before we have our conversation, and it is always magical how our conversation ends up. Summarized, the quote I selected today is from Eleanor Roosevelt, and it is, "You must do the things you think you cannot do." And wow, that is such a strong message of all of the things you've been sharing with us today, Scott. And I'm so thrilled and so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your life with us and your messages.
Well, again, it's an absolute pleasure. I love to help inspire people. I've loved watching you and your story and being a part of your story because you are a true rock star. So thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Inspired Hive podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Inspired Hive Podcast and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again. And as always, remember, be inspired and live inspired.